This is the Recover with God podcast, where we talk about recovery from eating disorders, disordered eating, diet culture, body image, weight struggles, overexercising, and anything related to food and body that keeps you feeling trapped. The enemy wants to distract us with these struggles, and that is why recovery with God is so important. This podcast will point you to God and the hope and freedom we have through Jesus, whether you're here for your own recovery or you want to help someone you know. So let's dive in and hear what God has to say through this episode of the Recover with God podcast. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Recover with God podcast. I'm Jayme, host of this podcast, and today I am joined by Amie Shields, founder of Charis Eating Disorder Care, a nonprofit ministry located on Amelia Island in Florida. Charis offers high quality Christian treatment for all types of eating disorders, and Amie and team have a passion for making care more affordable for those with limited or no insurance. Amie also has her own story of eating disorder recovery to share, which led her to found Charis. I'm so eager for you to hear it, so let's get started. Hi, Amie. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here today to share your story and more about Charis, which we will dive into. So I just really appreciate you saying yes to this.
It is my joy and privilege. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let me dive into the first question. And any listeners who've been, if this is not your first episode, you probably know what question I'm about to ask because my favorite word is zeal. And so I love to know what other people think about this word. And I'll give my own definition, which is living with a passionate and persistent pursuit of a purpose. So, Amie, I would love to know, what does living with zeal look like in your life right now?
I definitely can resonate with that passion and purpose and just really an enthusiasm and an excitement that just drives us to keep going even when we don't think we can. And even on the hardest of days when we might not feel zealous, having that intrinsic passion that just continues to motivate us.
Yeah, because there will be days when the zeal is not always there. It's not gonna be on all the time, but knowing that deep at the core, like, what is driving us is important. So, yeah, I love that. And now I would love to open it up to you to share your story, whatever God has placed on your heart to share about yourself, about where you're at in life now, and Charis Eating Disorder Care. So, I'm opening up the floor to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, as you shared, my name is Amie Shields. I am Oh my goodness. I will challenge thoughts of shame and share. I'm 49 years old and I truly am 49. I live on Amelia Island with my husband. We have four incredible children. And I praise God that I can say that I am recovered from an eating disorder that nearly took my life and certainly sucked a lot of joy out of my life. Um, but God, and He is the restorer and a redeemer of all things. And that is definitely not my story anymore. So I struggled with an eating disorder initially when I was in college and began to get the help that I needed, but really denied the recommendations of my team for getting the highest level of care that I needed. And sadly, instead of fully recovering from my eating disorder, I learned to be good at saying the right things and covering a lot of symptoms. And somehow I managed to kind of fly under the radar for about 20 years. And it was in my initial struggle with an eating disorder that I met my husband. I'm just so grateful to God for bringing him into my life. He saw me where I was and he loved me where I was. And he really took me out of a lot of the toxicity in my life that was driving the eating disorder behaviors. And so just being able to live in a new way and being unconditionally loved and hearing the truths about what God says I am was really healing in my life. it just unfortunately was not completely healing to the eating disorder. And so for a couple of decades, I struggled. By the grace of God, He allowed me to have four children. I really struggled after the birth of those children with my eating disorder and with behaviors. But again, somehow was able to do it, to struggle. Um, in some way not as severely as would raise eyebrows with other people until um, probably 2014, 2015, when some adult life stressors hit me. Really, some adult traumas affected me, and it threw me right back into the arms of the eating disorder. And it was almost like those embers that were just kind of barely burning down there. It was like somebody just kind of threw kerosene on them, and things got really extreme really quickly in a way that only the eating disorder can do. And it came to a place where I was not only endangering my life, but sadly endangering the life of my children and the people around me because of my behaviors. And so it was necessary for me to enter residential treatment, as has been recommended, had been recommended all those years ago. But this time I trusted the recommendation. And I'm really thankful to be able to say that I had really good insurance that covered my entire treatment stay. I
Wow.
don't know that I would be alive today if that were not the case. But thankfully, I did have really good insurance. But when I was in treatment, getting the help that I needed, there were several ladies that I was there in treatment with who, after a few weeks, they were very tearfully packing their things and leaving. And when I would say, what's wrong? They would say, "Oh, my insurance cut out." And so they would have to go home, or they had to step down to PHP quite more quickly than they needed to. And I just remember even thinking there, like, there's something very wrong with this picture. How
Yes.
is it that this woman is in the same place that I am, or more sick, needing help just as deservedly as I did, yet I got to stay and she had to leave? It just felt very, very wrong and very broken to me. Um, and as when I came home and started walking the road of recovery and really started to look at the research, I was just appalled that in the United States of America, of the 30 million people who struggle with an eating disorder, only 20% could get any help at all.
What?
But here's the thing, only 20% of that 20% were able to get the help that they needed as long as they needed it in order to sustain full recovery. So that's like one in five, one in four. And I just thought, how in the world, first of all, I'm grateful to God that I was one of the 21 in that fourth percentile.
Yeah.
But how is that possible in the United States, especially when we know that every 52 minutes someone is dying as a result of their eating disorder behaviors? And I feel like the more I learned, the more the Lord was just like lighting this passion in me to be a part of the difference. And so we started a support group through our nonprofit, and we started connecting with people all over the world. And I was able to meet so many people. And then I started recovery coaching, and in working individually with these clients, like for so many of them, I was like, okay, this is not an appropriate level of care. We have to get you to residential. And they would just say, "Oh yeah, been there, done that, 20 years. I can't go." And to me at first that felt like an excuse. But then I started like helping them look based on, some of them had Medicare, some of them had no insurance at all.
Okay.
And I found out that it was $2,000 a day for them to go to treatment. And you have to sign the statement that says you'll stay at least 30 days, or you're financially responsible for 30 days. So
Whoa.
I never would have had that kind of money. They
Mhm.
didn't have that kind of money. And so that's when my eyes were really opened that there was nowhere for these women to go other than in and out of the hospital, which was a cycle that they had been repeating year after year after year, where they go into their hospital, or their insurance would pay for hospitalization. And so they'd be there for 3 or 4 days, get things stabilized so that on paper they weren't going to die tomorrow. But then they
Mhm.
would send them right back home, right back into the same behaviors, only to repeat the process. And I just kept thinking, this is not okay. We live in the United States of America where no one should be experiencing this. And
Yeah.
so I thought surely like there's a nonprofit somewhere where they could go. And I found two nonprofits that are residential treatment facilities that do good work. But if your primary struggle is an eating disorder, they can't help you, especially if your weight is below what's termed normal, then they definitely wouldn't accept you. But if you are engaging in purging, misuse of exercise, any of that, they said that they were not equipped to help you. And thankfully, I'm glad that they could acknowledge that because they didn't
True.
have, they had a dietitian that would serve
Mm.
50 people.
Okay.
But everybody ate the same thing, and they didn't have specialized care for that. So I'm thankful that they would acknowledge that they weren't equipped to help in that way, but there
True.
was nowhere for them to go.
Mm.
And so I just kept thinking there has to be a better way.
Yeah,
But I very much believe in doing things the right way. I think if you're going to do it well, or don't do it. And
absolutely.
so I thought I don't want to just open up a safe house for people who have eating disorders. We want to do it according to the very highest of clinical standards. I want to make sure that we are following evidence-based practices, and so I just started looking at that and researching all of that. What would it take to have a comprehensive treatment team in a 24/7, beautiful, safe
Mm.
environment? What would that actually cost? And so we figured that out. Our board of directors was on board, and we just started praying, asking the Lord to move mountains and allow it to happen. And in December of 2020, he gave us the Charis House, which is where I'm
Oh,
sitting today. And it
yeah.
took us about 16 months to be able to be licensed with ACA. We had to do a few things on the inside, like we had to add fire sprinklers and alarms and all kinds of red tape with the county.
Mm.
But in May of 2022, we were able to open the doors to the first and only nonprofit residential treatment center that's specific to eating disorder recovery in the nation.
It's amazing.
I can honestly say it
Mm.
has been one of the most rewarding things that the Lord has ever allowed me to be a part of. It's definitely been the hardest thing that we've ever
Mm.
done. But it is just such a privilege to be able to come to work every day and to be able to hold hope for women who are just incredible, but they can't see it and they
Mhm.
can't hold it for themselves. So to be able to hold that hope for them until they can hold it for themselves is just absolutely incredible. And I thank God for the joy of being able to do that. I realized we talked about that 30 million people who struggle. He could have chose any one of them to be a part
Mm.
of the work that he is doing here. This is not about me. This is what God is doing.
Yeah.
Um, but he kind of extended his arm and just said, I'm going to invite you just to be a part of this. And and I thank him for it every day.
It is amazing that God chooses us. He doesn't need to. He could do so much. He could do everything on his own, right? Every
Sure.
single thing. And he chooses to use us. And knowing that your story has so much power and that drove you, going back to the first question about zeal, like passion was there for you because you experienced it yourself. And now, you know, launching this, Charis House and the entire ministry, the nonprofit, you've been there. And I think that there is so much power in recovery when you find people who understand, find
Absolutely.
people who can relate to you and you don't feel alone. Because I don't know about you when you were struggling, but for me, in my recovery or before my recovery, I felt very alone, especially as a Christian woman struggling with an eating disorder. I was like, am I the only one? No one is talking about this. And that felt really shameful. And so even just that part of your story and the fact that God chose you, that just makes has such an impact and just your willingness too. I mean, that he calls us to things and we don't have to say yes, and he might use someone else. So I'm so grateful that you said yes and that this is happening. This is here. There is help for women, especially I had no idea the statistics on the insurance piece. I knew that everyone's insurance is different and not everyone covers, inpatient versus PHP or just even seeing a counselor, a therapist, or a dietitian. Those are staggering numbers. I mean, I'm blown away, and I just cannot believe that there isn't more, um, just more emphasis or more effort into helping women who struggle with this because it's such an epidemic, really. I mean, you think of all the other things that people could die from or that are affecting the world, and eating disorders are it's huge and continuing to grow. Especially, I think COVID didn't really help the situation at all
For sure.
when people were at home. So that's a powerful story. Like that really, I I knew a little bit about Charis House and your story, but just hearing all of that, hearing the statistics, hearing who this is for, how this is helping, it's incredible. It's just when it gets me really, excited that there is help and hope like this for people who need it, who don't have that support otherwise. So thank you. Thank you for saying yes to it. And um and thank you for just being very raw and vulnerable about your own story as well. I can only imagine going through something like a relapse like that after years of kind of being in that pseudo maybe recovery space that was probably extremely hard, but obviously took you to where you are now
Yeah.
and really was the catalyst for that and you understanding the value and the necessity of inpatient care for people who need it. Um, so what would you say to someone who's maybe listening right now and whether they've been in residential or not, whether they've attempted that, but they're going through maybe a relapse in
Mm.
their life or just maybe they're in that pseudo space too where they think, well, I'm recovered enough, right? But it's not really freedom. What would you say to that person and encourage them to maybe continue true recovery?
Yeah, so for the one who's just kind of in that quasi, if that's even a thing,
Yeah.
um, I I would say that it's only a matter of time before the eating disorder is activated again, and now is the time to get help. If you are able to manage this in an outpatient setting, then get the help in an outpatient setting where you are now so that you don't have to disrupt your life and everyone in your life to be able to seek a higher level of care. But we're either moving toward recovery or we're moving toward the eating disorder. And so to try to exist in this quasi in between is only going to be sustainable for so long. And your genetics, everything that has predispositioned you for the development of an eating disorder is still very much there. And if you've not worked through everything enough to pull that eating disorder out by its roots, then what activated your genetic predisposition the first time, it's kind of a ticking time bomb. It's only a matter of time before all of that explodes again. And so you want to get that help that you need. And Jesus didn't give his life so that we live in a quasi free state. Jesus gave his life so that we can live in abundance, so that we are not enslaved to anything, so that we can embrace the freedom that he paid such a high price for. So there's so many reasons to seek help today.
I love that truth. It is, I mean, it all goes back to the cross. It all goes back to Jesus and what he did for us. And that gives us the power over sin, the power over the eating disorder to make that change. And you're so right. God, he doesn't just choose us, when he needs, to carry out his mission, but he does. He wants us to live free and he wants us to be able to do that so we can also serve him because I think eating disorders are such a distraction to the rest of our lives. I mean, it consumes you to the point that you really, I mean, whether it's your family, your friends, your job, all of those things, but also your ability to serve God. I mean,
Mhm.
it's for me, it was definitely an idol. So I think that's great advice and encouragement for someone who might be there right now. And really just thinking honestly, am I, if you're not sure, ask those questions. do you feel free? Is there something still lingering that you might need to take care of? So thank you for that. And now I do want to dive back into Charis House because I just want to hear so much more about it. But I wanted you to offer that advice, so thanks for doing that. But I would love to just hear more about Charis House, the ministry. You already shared what led you to found it and kind of who it helps. But I would like to hear more about how is faith incorporated into what you do?
For sure. So I shared before that we want to operate according to the highest of clinical standards, but the
Mhm,
second part of that is, but with the deepest of spiritual roots.
mhm.
We know that Jesus changes everything,
Yeah.
especially a treatment center, not even a treatment center, but especially a treatment center. He makes all the difference. And um, I know in my life, without Jesus, there would have been no hope. It did no good for me for people to say, "You're strong, you're worthy, you are enough," because I can give you a whole list of reasons and times when I am not strong, when I am not worthy, because I've done some pretty terrible things, and when I am not enough, all of the ways that I am completely insufficient. So those lofty worldly phrases mean nothing apart from Jesus. But because Jesus lives in me, that changes everything. Because of Jesus, I am strong enough. I am worthy. I am enough, but not because of anything I've done, because of Jesus. And also, so much of recovery is learning to untangle all of those lies that we've believed about ourselves for so long and learning to think and believe a new way. And you can't do that apart from Jesus. We have to have absolute truth to tether our souls to because everything else is changing. So I don't want to hold on to this affirmation that might be true in the moment, but that is later proven false. The only thing that is absolutely true is the gospel. And so we need the gospel in order to have any hope of untangling all of the past that's led to the development of an eating disorder. So Jesus is crucial in recovery. And we don't separate faith at the Charis House. I think there's pretty much any treatment center that you can go to, and they have what they would call a faith track. But
Okay.
basically, that means that you're going to go like to a spirituality class or group and you name your higher power,
Mhm.
or they will make a chaplain available to you.
Okay.
But that's just not the model of treatment at the Charis House. The name of Jesus is spoken in pretty much every group. His name is definitely a part of every room of this house. We absolutely pray before meals, but our body image groups, our psychotherapy groups, our process groups, um, it's just hard to take Jesus out of that when he is such a part of everything that we do.
Mm.
And so we have discipleship with our patients 3 times a week. We take our patients to church on Sundays, and that's just part of the milieu of being at the Charis House. Um, Amidst all of the psychotherapy and the nutrition therapy and all of the equine therapy and the art therapy and all of those things, Jesus is central to all of that.
Mm.
But we don't ever want anybody to get here and be surprised. We are very strongly faith-based in what we do. And so when people call and inquire, we want to make sure that we share that with them up front. I don't want, I tell our admissions team, like, God forbid somebody get here and say, you tricked me, or
Mhm.
I had no idea, because that's not who we are either. And we realize that this might not be the treatment center that is a safe and conducive environment to others.
Mhm.
But often we do have patients who will come, who will just say in the beginning, "Hey, that's for you, and that's fine. I want nothing to do with that." And we absolutely respect that, but we share with them before they come, like, you are still going to hear the name of Jesus. You are still going to be sitting around the table where we thank the Lord for the food that He's given us. You don't have to engage in that.
Yeah.
Um, the group is going to go to church. You can put earbuds in and listen if you want. You certainly don't have to pretend to worship,
Mm.
but you're going to be there. So we just want them to know.
Yeah.
Um, the type of treatment center that we are, but in every one of those situations, in several, we've seen them come to know the Lord while they're here. But in
Yeah.
every scenario, they've said that this is a different Jesus than I expected to encounter. And for some, we've had some atheists come and they've said, if there is a God, I know that he's this one because of what I've experienced. And so who knows what the Lord will do with those seeds,
Right.
but we are very strongly faith-based, and because of that, we do treat a lot of people who are uninsured at the Charis House, but we also have, I would say, just as many people who have insurance but who choose the Charis House because of its
Okay.
commitment to evidence-based, strong clinical support with those deep spiritual
Mm.
roots. It really is a very different environment. And it's what people want after they have heard of it or after they've experienced it.
Yeah. I can imagine, looking for treatment, it would be challenging to find beyond talking to a therapist or a counselor, which you can find Christian faith-based people to speak to and to go in those sessions, but actually inpatient or, going to a residential facility. I don't think there are very many Christian-based ones out there to even choose from. And so the fact that this is available to not only as a nonprofit, but also just available as a choice, because Christians do struggle with this too. And I really appreciate your heart behind wanting people to know up front that is going to be the focus. God, Jesus, they're going to be at the center of the conversation. And that's so important. I believe that's crucial to recovery, to have that relationship with God, to know that you're not being condemned for it. Because I know from personal experience that for me it was hard. I'd grown up a Christian, and then I struggled with an eating disorder, and I had a really hard time saying, okay, I can still have a relationship with God while I'm trying to recover from this, or while I'm struggling with this. And I felt like my relationship with God really suffered because I just didn't think I could go to him in those struggles. And that's when I needed him
Mm.
arguably the most, I mean, we need him every day for everything, but I needed him to recover, and I was pushing him away because I was ashamed or felt guilty or didn't think he was going to listen to me when I was praying because I was sinning and had this idol. So I think just being able to break down those barriers too, and maybe those false beliefs that you can't, you have to fix yourself before you can rebuild your relationship with God. And so I'm just so grateful that this exists for people who really do need it, and and then also having the faith element. And it just made me think too, because the when I started this podcast, I was debating on what to call it. And I knew it was going to be faith-based. Like that was not a question at all in my mind. Every guest we were going to talk about God and Jesus, but I almost was not going to say call it recover with God. And I just felt really convicted. Like, no, I don't want to be like that bait and switch, like you said, where like people are starting to listen and then like, oh wait, this is faith-based. This is about
Mhm.
Jesus. I don't want any part of this. Like I wanted people to also know as soon as they listen, like you're gonna hear you're gonna hear the truth, you're gonna hear Jesus, you're gonna hear God, you're gonna hear possibly the gospel like you just shared. And so I think that's just something that really resonated with me too. But um, like you talked a little bit about some of the kind of treatments that you offer, like art therapy, equine therapy. Um, are there any other services that you offer that maybe we didn't cover yet?
Yeah. So that's in residential, definitely the psychotherapy and nutrition therapy, and then all of the experiential therapy, that the equine assisted therapy, art assisted therapy. We do yoga, so for movement assisted therapy. Um, Music. So all of those experiential things. We also have experiential outings where we'll do kind of a recreational outing on Saturdays, and then we also do some restaurant experiential therapies where we'll go into a restaurant and do real world things, to know that that's a part of real life, is learning to be able to go to a restaurant and nourish your body. Um, so that's in residential, and certainly as we step down to PHP, those things continue. But also in outpatient, we offer several things. We have Um, we offer nutrition therapy, nutrition coaching, individual psychotherapy. We have individual recovery coaches. We have a program called Resolved that's a group coaching program. So it's in collaboration with your outpatient therapist and dietitian, but we offer a meal support group, a nutrition and body image group, and then just a process group each week that you can be a part of. And then there's text support in the afternoon. Um, we offer recovery retreats. We're not doing one this year just because of all of the expansion that is kicking us in the behind in terms of time outside of treatment. But other than this year, we offer an annual recovery retreat, and it's for those who struggle and for a support person to come, because both need support. And so that can be a spouse, it can be a mom and dad, just a mom, just a dad, a sister, a best friend, or you can come by yourself if you don't want to bring a support person. Um, we have a once a month support group for family and friends of those supporting, just for them to be encouraged and for them to um, have truth spoken over them as well.
So needed.
Trying to think what else. Um, we have an alumni gathering every year
Oh,
for those who've
wow.
been through treatment at the Charis House. So all kinds of things.
Yes. And also in such a beautiful location too. I know you mentioned like Amelia Island, but and I've personally never been there, even though I used to live in
Oh, it's
Florida.
beautiful.
But
You should come. It's
I
beautiful.
know I do need to. It is on my list to go, and we just stuck. I lived in Sarasota, so more on the other
Okay.
side of the state.
Yeah.
But at some point, it is still on my list because I've just seen how beautiful it is. It's actually a little closer of a drive for us from Tennessee, where I live. So we need to make it happen. But
Yes,
no, it's
we'd
just
like to have you.
yeah, and I would love to see Charis House in person as well. But just the whole area just looks amazing. And so just that place to feel, see God's nature and the ocean and all of the adventures that you can have, like you said, showing people how to recover and also like live your life and
Yeah.
and enjoy and learn how to do that again. Because I think having an eating disorder just takes away your
Mhm.
life. It really sucks the life out of you, and you don't kind of have to learn how to live again a little bit, and how living and incorporating what you're learning in recovery into that living as well. So sounds
We
like you
say
do.
that often, that eating disorders don't just restrict food, they restrict life.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we want to help you find your life again.
Mhm. That's so true. And you don't even really see it coming until it's already too late. I feel like you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore. So I think it sounds amazing. A lot of different services that you offer. And um, so when it comes to, say, someone reaches out to you or they call your team and they're not maybe sure what level of care they might need, how do you help them determine that?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and most people don't know. So we do an assessment, which is just a series of questions to ask you about your life and the things that you're doing, the food that you're eating, the behaviors that you're engaging in, and then our clinical director reviews it and makes a recommendation for a level of care based on the evidence-based standards right now from the American Psychological Association.
Okay, okay, that's good to know that someone doesn't have to call or email and think I need to know exactly where I'm gonna
Absolutely.
I'm gonna have to be.
Yeah.
And then kind of going back to, you talked about insurance and talked about supporting people who maybe don't have insurance. How does that work? If someone came, was interested in Charis House and said, I don't have insurance or my coverage I know for a fact is not great, how would you help them in that
Yeah.
situation?
Well, I wish I could say it's free, but we haven't found a way to do that yet.
Mm.
But we do offer care according to what it actually costs us, which is still more than I wish it was. But again, we believe in doing things the right way, and so the comprehensive team and treatment actually costs $550 a day. But that's better than the $2,000 a
I
day.
was just gonna say, that's a quarter of that
Yeah.
cost, so
And then we also, because of our incredible community and so many individuals and churches and businesses that believe in what we do and support what we do, we're able to offer scholarship. And so for those with the most significant financial need, we're able to cover 80% of that cost.
wow, okay, that's huge. That's
Yeah.
amazing, and that so many people have come together. Now, just out of curiosity too, if anyone's listening and they're thinking, "I would like to maybe donate to this cause for scholarships," is there a way that they can do that?
Yes, absolutely. We welcome that.
Okay,
If you just visit our website, it's
mhm,
www.chariscare.com.
okay,
There's the top right button says give. You can donate financially in that way, or there's a whole page of ways to give that if the Lord's not calling you to give financially, of other ways that you can support us.
great. I'll put the link to your website in the show notes, so for anyone
Thank
listening, if
you.
that's just something you're curious about, maybe God's calling you to do, you can go there and check out and learn more. So, you already did mention I had a question about the family and friends, but you mentioned some things that are available to family and friends of those who might also need support and want to help. Is there anything else that you would add to that, or do you think you covered everything?
Yeah, well, I would just say that we recognize that eating disorders damage and destroy every relationship they touch. And so, family and friends, we see that and we understand that. Many of us carry great shame around that, even though we know shame is not ours to carry. That is, it's not the way that we want them to feel. But if I'm speaking to you as a family or friends of or a supporter, I want you to know that we see you and that we believe that you deserve support in a safe space as well. And that's why we've created that clinically led. It is led by a clinician, that support group that meets the first Monday of every month. But there's also a place on our website that's resources, and
Okay.
it's twofold. There's a resource side for those who are struggling with an eating disorder, and then there's a resource side for those who are supporting them. And so there are lots of videos there for you. There are lots of articles, downloadables for you. So there's a whole section there too that will hopefully be an encouragement to you as you walk this road with your loved one.
That's incredible. I think that is something that is not widely available. I know people are seeking I've talked to moms and friends and people who and even my own family when I was struggling, they did not know how to help. And I think you feel so lost in that too. And also just resources in the sense of or guidance in the sense of, not feeling like you have to fix someone either. It's not your
Sure.
responsibility to do
Sure.
the fixing and to, it's gonna be their choice. But at the same time, like how you can support does help and it can make a difference. So
Yes.
um so grateful that you have that too. So if anyone listening, if you're on that side of things and you really just want more advice, more guidance, more information, please go to the show notes and go to the
Yeah.
website and you can get that there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And now you hinted at kind of some plans that you're in the works with for expanding. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, we're so excited about all that the Lord continues to do. We have the Charis House, which is adult residential, and right now partial hospitalization comes back here for programming as well. But we just purchased a home that will be specifically for partial hospitalization. So it's called Charis Place. Within 2 years, we hope to open Charis Cove, which will be our adolescent treatment center. We
Okay.
already have the land purchased for that. And then we just need to raise the money and build the home for that. So if anybody's interested in supporting that project, it's a major one and the need is so great. We talk to moms and dads, several moms and dads every week who are just begging us to get the home built. So we're ready to do it. We just need the resources. And then within 5 years, we hope to open Charis Lodge, which is a home for men.
Oh, wow. That's incredible because I feel like people don't talk about it enough when it comes to men, but they struggle too.
They do, and right now, they don't have a place of their own to go.
Mhm.
If a male needs, a residential level of care, then they have to go to a treatment center that would be considered gender neutral, and while I'm thankful that they have that space to go, I believe that they are just as deserving of their own place where
Mm.
it is the same eating disorder, but it impacts men in different ways, and they face different issues, and there are different struggles and different
Mm.
thoughts associated with that. And I believe that they deserve to have a place of their very own where their needs can be really directly addressed.
Uh, that's huge. That's amazing. That is a lot that you're working on, and I will definitely be praying that God continues
You.
to provide as you take the next steps because, gosh, it is so needed for adolescents, like you said, and men. And that's definitely something we've talked about a couple times on the podcast when it comes to men, but overall, I feel like there's a different stigma when it comes to that, and unfortunately, or men don't talk about it, or it's kind of glossed over as, well, that's not really an eating disorder. That's just being healthy or the gym culture or whatever you want to call it. And there's a lot of pressure for men too. So thank you for stepping out into that space in faith and, trusting that God will provide those next steps to make that happen. Um, well, thank you for sharing all of those plans, Amie, that you have yet to come. Very exciting. A lot of faith, a lot of God involved, which is great because that just shows his power in what's going to happen. And so thank you for saying yes to all of that. And I'm really excited to see what's next for Charis House and just all the people you're going to help. So, is there anything that maybe we didn't cover in this conversation yet that you really have on your heart to share?
I don't think so. You've been such a wonderful host. You've asked some really great questions. I think I would just want to say, like, if you're listening to this podcast, most likely you are impacted by an eating disorder or you know someone who is.
Mm.
And so I just want to remind you that there is so much hope. Um, we know that as long as Jesus is alive, there is hope for today and hope for tomorrow,
Yes.
and he is alive. So there is hope. And so I just want to encourage you to do the next right thing, whatever that looks like for you, because there is hope and because you're so deserving of recovery.
Amen. And it really is just one step. I think to add to what you said, it can feel so scary to take that leap and think, well, it's an all or nothing decision, or I have to recover tomorrow because I decided to do this. And it is very much baby steps, little steps. Like you said, what is the next right thing? And might seem really small, but every step counts. So
Yeah,
whatever that next step looks like, please, please, please do it for yourself and
absolutely.
yeah, mostly for yourself, but also for the, just to live again.
Yeah,
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah. And you mentioned a lot of resources already, and I'll link the website in the show notes. Is there anything else that you would like me to link to, or any other resources that maybe you haven't mentioned yet?
I don't think so. Just linking to our website, there
Hmm.
are lots of resources there for
Great.
those struggling and those supporting. If you would like to support the ministry in any way, there are lots of opportunities to do that there. Everything from giving financially to volunteering to our wish list that is always there. We also have our annual gala coming up at August 29th. And it's such a great way to be involved. It's just a fun, beautiful night to come and celebrate all that the Lord has done. And it happens to be over Labor Day weekend, with it being on August 20th. There's a
That's right.
room block at the Omni Resort. So
Great.
for like a third of the cost, you can come enjoy the gala and celebrate Labor Day weekend at a gorgeous resort on Amelia Island. So
Mm,
it's a
that
wonderful
sounds
time to come.
that sounds fantastic. Yeah. And that's all on your website. So yes, people go
Oh,
to the
yeah.
website. You can get all the information. And now also, are you on Instagram or Facebook or social media?
Yes, we are. If you just search Charis Eating Disorder Care, will come up for both of those. And we'd love you to follow us there.
Great. Yeah, that's just another way to get connected and learn more if you're just still maybe on the fence about it. Just keep searching, keep praying, keep
Yeah, and there's daily
doing.
encouragement there, on our
Yes.
social feeds as well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Amie, for being here
Thank
today,
you.
for sharing, yeah, your story about Charis House, what God is doing, and I know that it's gonna bless not only someone who might be struggling today, but also their friends, their family, those other support people who really do need help too. So, just
Absolutely.
thank you for stepping into this and saying yes, and just really grateful for you.
Well, same. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all you do to support
Mm,
others and for you being willing to share your story. God is so good.
he certainly is. Yes, amen. Hey there, it's Jayme again, and you made it to the end of this episode of the Recover with God podcast. I pray that God is speaking to your heart right now and that you go on with your day feeling less alone. If you haven't already, I hope you hit that follow button to subscribe and receive notifications for future episodes. And did you know that if you leave a quick rating or review, you can help more people find this podcast too? God designed us for community, so follow along and help others do the same to feel less alone together. I hope you tune in next time, and until then, you can always catch up on any past podcasts you might have missed. P.S. I'm cheering for you.